Good afternoon, and thank you for attending today's session. This session is being recorded. It will be turned off when we reach the question and answer portion. The webinar will be available to you for future use on our YouTube channel. And for your convenience, the link will be sent out after the webinar. So the goal of today's webinar is to provide a brief overview of standardized recipes, product formulation statements, child nutrition labels, and USDA product information sheets. And again, here's our agenda. Why do we use a standardized recipe? There are a number of reasons in child nutrition, and we would like to provide food items of consistent quality in all of your school nutrition programs. They do provide the same amount of product to be produced every time, also known as a predictable yield. The same portion is provided each time to the customers. Costs are easier to control.
Muted.
Unmuted.
Muted. Unmuted.
So a standardized recipe is one that has been tried, adapted, and retried several times. It's been found to produce the same results and yield every time. With that, you will need to use the same ingredients, both the type and the quantity. You also will need to use the same equipment, and the same recipe may produce different results in a different kitchen. So recipes are needed for any item with more than one ingredient. For example, beef stir fry, seasoned vegetables, and even sandwiches. So what information must you contain on a standardized recipe? So the first item is yield, which would give you the serving size and the number of servings that recipe will produce. You'll need to list all your ingredients identified by form. For example, fresh, frozen, or canned. The correct measurements in terms of weight and or pack size needed to produce the recipe. Preparation procedures. You may also contain any HACCP procedures in the process. Here's an example of a sample standardized recipe. We also use a lot of processed foods in the school nutrition arena. And by definition, a processed food is any food that has been subject to processing, even as simple as canning, cooking, freezing, dehydration, and or milling. So in the child nutrition programs, these are our USDA, also known as commodity foods, or any foods you're purchasing from a manufacturer. So processed foods come in two areas. One that has a child nutrition label, which is a voluntary program for manufacturers, or a product that does not have a child nutrition label, and we'll talk about the different areas to go. So if you have a child nutrition label, it has a very distinct CN or child nutrition logo from the Food and Nutrition Services of the United States Department of Agriculture. It will clearly show you the meal contribution statement. It's identified with a 6-digit product ID number with the month and the year. It also includes a nutrition facts panel, which shows the processed product with determination of calories, saturated fat, and sodium. And these are the 3 target areas that we look at through the administrative review process. And a new addition is a whole grain rich criteria. So here's an example of a sample CN label, which should be familiar to most of you. So if it has no child nutrition label, one must obtain a product formulation statement, or a PFS. And this lists information on the manufacturer's letterhead. The next step would be to review the PFS and determine if its credible components are in the finished product. For example, what you would look for is there enough beef present in the portion size to credit accordingly? For example, a 2.4 beef patty may credit as a 2-ounce meat alternate. And here's an example of a product formulation statement. And these would be available for meat alternates, vegetables, fruit, and grain products. So if you have no child nutrition label, you would need to look for or obtain a nutrition facts panel, review the ingredients, and see if the product credits to the child nutrition meal pattern. And what you would need to look for is, do the ingredients match a description in the food buying guide? So here's an example of a sample nutrition facts panel, which must include the ingredients, which is down here. And again, a copy of your food buying guide for child nutrition. It's also available online and at the end of this webinar, the link. Also available would be a USDA Foods Product Information sheet. And taking a look at this sample, we would see that we have broccoli with no salt added, and the form is frozen. It credits in the vegetable category, and the subgroup is dark green. And what this product information sheet will tell you is the crediting and yielding. For example, in this product, one case yields about 164 half-cup servings of cooked drained broccoli. And the CN crediting is that the half-cup credits in a half-cup dark green vegetable category. And another product that's very familiar in our program would be a beef crumble. Again, the category is the meat alternate. And the fully cooked product in the description is that one case of beef crumble provides approximately 557 1.15 ounce portions. So that would round down in the crediting to a 1 ounce equivalent in meat alternate. So again, these labels are very handy in our product for purchasing and also for product yield to make sure you're meeting the meal pattern requirements. Another area, if you have no child nutrition label, would be to conduct a yield study on your own if the food cannot be found in the food buying guide. We've recently developed a yield study form through the Nevada Department of Agriculture, and that would cover the areas of fruit and vegetable components that are not found specifically in the food buying guide. And here's an example of our form. And you can call for it and get it off of our website. We also have instructions on how to utilize this form. So again, just a brief recap of menu planning records. And we get a lot of questions from the state on what must I have for a child nutrition program requirements. And again, an item would be that nutrition facts panel for all your foods, a USDA food product information sheet, child nutrition labels if they're available, or product formulation statements, and standardized recipes if you're using them in your program. And the amount of time to keep these menu planning records are the same as the administrative review requirements, which would be for 3 years plus the current year. And best practices for all of you out in the field would be on your standardized recipes. Feel free to modify those recipes for age and grade groups in the areas such as portion size, flavors, and names. And you can have different recipes available in your program for the different age and grade groups. All you need to do is keep the most recent CN labels, USDA product information sheet, and product formulation statements in your binders. As you know, there have been a lot of changes in the field from the manufacturers, especially with the whole grain rich criteria. And all of us will start to seeing more changes with the labeling and the product information sheets on sodium as well. And one great practice would be to ask for labels from your sales reps, brokers, and your distributing companies, preferably prior to purchasing the product. Then you have it on hand to determine if you're going to use it in your product, and it's ready to go for your binder. And just a quick tip is try not to wait until your admin review to start this process. Resources available would be the Nevada Department of Agriculture Food and Nutrition Division website, the United States Department of Agriculture websites listed here, and also the National Food Service Management Institute. And this webinar will be archived on our YouTube channel if you have future need for it with some of your other site staff. And with that, if there's any questions, feel free at this time to go ahead and type in a question or raise your hand to be unmuted. And we'll go ahead and stop our recording.